Alright everyone, it's been a weird 48 hours in Desantis land, first coming out with a very psychologically projective speech with regards to Trump, rambling about how it's not the same Trump that it was in 2016 and stuff like that, and it doesn't come off well. Again, Desantis doesn't have the sort of delivery necessary to make that kind of hit stick the same way that some candidates can. He just doesn't have the gusto when he's speaking like that. Then you have DeSantis War Room, completely going apeshit for pretty much the entire night with an enormous tweet storm, some of which don't even really make sense. Like, you're retweeting things that are so far laughable that it's like Elizabeth Warren's meme team at this point, and that's basically where the campaign's going. But then there's an actual policy issue, and that's sort of what's stealing the show right now, where DeSantis is ordering the University of Florida and the University of South Florida to disband a student group, dedicated Students for Justice in Palestine, it's called specifically. And the office of the governor, of course, his people and their draft, basically their command to these colleges, universities rather, is that these groups are anti-Semitic, that violates state law. Specifically HB 269, which is interesting because that was my red line in the sand when DeSantis pushed that through without rescinding certain elements with regards to billeting in public places. Yes, it covers public places, not just private spaces, so we have seen people charged for free speech in public places at this point, simply because the state of Florida disagrees and finds the speech objectionable. That raises serious First Amendment concerns. This element was not actually an element that I had a specific problem with, and here's the issue. Some people are saying, base DeSantis, ha ha ha, fuck Hamas. Others are saying, well, clearly this is a First Amendment violation. There's the problem. It's in a gray area where it's kind of both. It's Schrodinger's First Amendment violation. Firstly, to the idea of it not being a violation. If these groups are materially supporting terrorism, and Hamas a legally recognized terrorist front, then that would be exempt from the normal First Amendment purview. We're talking about material support. We're not talking about the students, they drafted a change.org petition to take Hamas off the terrorist list, so they're doing something effectively in support of them, but it's not material support, really. They're not giving aid and comfort in the sense of sending money directly to Hamas or something like that. That would be different. The allegation is that they're supporting a terrorist network. That, again, would be an exemption. The other component that would render this not a First Amendment violation, we'll get to how it kind of is in a moment, but the other reason why it wouldn't be is these are taxpayer-funded universities. They are under more purview of government, therefore, than a private college would be, than a union of people, a syndicate of some sort that privately meets would be, that a company that doesn't take government grants or something would be, etc. It's funny because actually we have a juxtaposition where groups that do take taxpayer money or have monopolies and that are legally granted, someplace like Google, is given more latitude to fuck with people for lawful political speech often than private groups like, a Christian bakery or something like that. It's the exact opposite of how the legal system is meant to work in terms of free expression. Now, how could you construe it as a constitutional violation? The students should have the right to organize for effectively whatever they want. The caveat being, are these groups receiving funds from the university, which in turn receives funds from the taxpayers? That effectively nullifies it. The other problem is that they're claiming that this runs afoul of the anti-Semitism law, which is totally unreflected in doctrine with regards to funding terrorists. It has to do with speech specifically. HB 269's main component is to restrict speech. It is technically an anti-free speech law. There are aspects of it that are clearly unconstitutional, again, such as banning people from billeting in a public space simply because the message is deemed to be objectionable and artificially making that a felony instead of normally it'd be public nuisance or something like that. Instead, because it's hateful speech, specifically directed at only one group of people, you can direct it at anyone else and it doesn't run afoul of the law, that particular component is unlawful. The component with regards to anti-Semitism on the college campus may not be. And a judge will have to adjudicate this, of course. There'll have to be judicial proceedings. I'm sure that these groups are going to fight back. In the end, it's hard to tell sort of who wins out on that token. I think HB 269 just shouldn't have been passed in its current form simply because the billeting proposal, the other proposals are like either the government clearly has that right, whether you like it or not, in some cases it's hit or miss, or it's a gray area, like with this. Tax-funded university, claim of material support for terrorists. Normally, if you think that a group of people, though, and this is another important thing to point out, if you believe that a student union is raising funds to buy bombs for Hamas or whatever they're going to claim is the material support, you prosecute them. You don't disband the student group and simply artificially declare, well, you're not allowed to have this group anymore at these universities because of tax funding or something. You investigate them, you try to bring people in on charges. Funding terrorists is a no-no under U.S. law. Now, you could refer it to the federal authorities, say, look, I've got a student group here, however many people in it, in the University of Florida, and they're doing fundraisers. Now, they claim to be pro-Palestine, but that money seems to be funneled to groups in Palestine that are literal state and non-state at this point, because they're, again, a Schrodinger situation, both state and non-state terroristic actors that are registered as such under U.S. law. Thus, that act would be in contravention of U.S. law. They're committing crimes on this campus and should be looked into, or maybe the state looks into it. That's what you would do. You don't, this is a political move. The other problem that I have, constitutional issue aside, is that this is effectively a political move. It's a political stunt by Ron Desantis to get into the news cycle where he's been ebbing for the most part for the last few months, all the way down to the point where he's now approaching single digits. By injecting himself into this conversation, he's hoping to gain supporters. Well, Donald Trump, clear, the next claim, the first claim was that Donald Trump liked Hezbollah. I guess the next claim will be he's weak on Hamas or something like that. You can expect that from the DeSantis war room at any time. Haven't bothered to check the Twitter this morning, their feed. They probably already posted something like that by now. So it's an interesting story. The long answer I've given you. The short answer is it's both constitutional and unconstitutional depending on how you parse it apart. And now the courts will probably have to get involved, which will be an interesting battle because then the problem is that then people will sort of juxtapose it with the Israel and Hamas thing, and it'll become unchained from normal political debate as to whether it's a good idea. And the constitutional side of it maybe will be decided by the court, but the public won't even be interested in the concept. To them, it's just an extension of the war against Hamas. And so, again, public opinion will be tainted by that. We'll see what happens. I don't think that his Hail Mary move is going to save his campaign, but clearly there's a political aspect to what DeSantis is doing here. Constitution itself aside in that sense. That's about all. Peace out.